morning, everyone, and welcome to my stream today. We are going to be talking about um, what matters in leadership. Today is Weak Leadership is Bleeding Your Business and How to Fix It. Leadership is messy, unpredictable, and full of oh crap moments. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Um, it's a it's a warm up. Here we are going to talk about oh crap to hell yes. Ever have an oh crap moment as a leader? Yep, every one of us here has had an oh crap moment. It might have been good, it might not have been good, but it could have been, every decision meets resistance and projects to a crawl. It could be, oh my God, this new opportunity is here. And what do I do with it? These are oh crap moments that every leader has at one point or another. So we're going to talk about that today. Right now, I am talking to many leaders who are unbelievably, understandably concerned about uncertainty. And because of that, they're trying to make decisions. And we're going to talk about that today. Today, right now, companies are slashing leadership development to save money, thinking they're cutting costs. But they're not. They're cutting momentum. And momentum is what keeps companies alive, especially today in 2025. If you have any comments, please drop it in the comments over here. I love to see who's here and what you're doing. Tell us where you're from, and we'll get your questions answered right here on the stream. So, cutting leadership development now is like cutting fire drills while the building is on fire. We have economic uncertainty, shifting policies, AI disruption, changing the way we work, and companies are tightening budgets like never before. And guess what's the first thing on the chopping block? Leadership development, basically training of all types. Because, hey, who needs strong leaders when everything's unpredictable, right? The reality is that cutting leadership development is not a cost saving move, it is a cost amplifying disaster. Turnover costs, studies show loss of top performers costs up to 200% of their salary. Cutting leadership training now, and you're basically handing your best people over to competitors. Harvard Business Review reports that leaders waste about 40% of their time on average to low value tasks. That's about 16 hours a week down the drain. Imagine what that's costing you. Slow leadership, decision-making bottlenecks, slowing down decisions. Missed opportunities equals lost revenue. Slow leadership equals slow decisions equals missed opportunities equals lost revenues. Have you seen leadership cuts only to regret it later? Dropping a few dollars, if you watch this play out, it makes a big difference. So, if you're here, tell me our rules of engagement. Tell me where you're from. Say hello. I'd love to hear all your questions about why leadership development is important, why you have seen things change with leadership development. And while we're doing that, we're going to talk about why do we cut it in the first place? When things get tight, someone always asks, do we really need this leadership training right now? Well, that is the wrong question. I've worked for a number of companies and I coach so many people that during downturns, they decide to take their leadership training and they figure it as a luxury and they cut the whole program. And what happens? Here are some of the things that I hear. Their top talent starts leaving. No development. Why should I stay? Right? Top talent starts leaving. Projects actually start to slow down to a crawl. Not that there's not activity going, but problems start happening and we need to make decisions. And there's a bottleneck every place. And we end up firefighting all over the place instead of making decisions and moving things forward. We're firefighting. Now, I was talking to someone just yesterday about this topic, that they feel like they're firefighting all over the place and they don't have time to coach and bring up their leaders in the organization. After talking about it, we started figuring out that this is the priority, is to build their leadership, build those people so that firefighting can happen where it needs to, decision making can happen immediately down on the ground instead of going all the way up the chain and all the way back down again. So what also happens, I see this all the time. We end up bringing in consultants because we have so many problems. Projects aren't moving, people are leaving. We bring in consultants double to fix the chaos, spending way more than what training would have cost in the beginning. Way more than the time to help coach your people and bring them up. Way more than you need to. Here's the kicker. One of the biggest hidden costs is slow decisions. When leadership development stops, decision making grinds to a halt. Teams hesitate, managers second guess, and everything takes twice as long. And in business, slow equals expensive. Slow equals expensive. So, where are you? We need to talk about this. Come on. When I see this type of stuff happening, and I talk to many managers, the concept of what I talk to people about, the 4 fears of leadership. You might have heard me talk about this. The first one is the fear of incompetence, right? Actually, we call this imposter syndrome. It is so much out there that imposter syndrome is an enormous piece. And what happens? It slows down decisions because we're second guessing ourselves. You might see projects ping-ponging back and forth. Let's put this aside for now, and then we'll figure out what we'll do later. Let's put this one on the burner. Let's work on this one in the meantime. Oh, we have a decision. Let's do this one. You're causing so much waste. So if you start seeing projects slowing down, ping-ponging, and creating a culture of indecision, this is a problem with leadership. The second fear is the fear of appearing foolish. This is where people don't want to put new ideas. They're not going to be creative. They're going to stick with what they know and what they think works. Why do anything different? Why put myself out there? So you end up with a culture of very safe decision makers, no innovation, no creativity, allowing your competition to pass you. The third fear is the fear of failure. And, we're all heard this somewhere along the way. Maybe you didn't get an A on your report card. So, because of fear of failure, what I see a lot happen, we deflect decision making. We push it up to our boss, we push it out to another department, we deflect decision making. So this way, when something doesn't work out, the decision doesn't make a good result, we have someone to point a finger at. So this creates a culture of blame. And the last one is fear of vulnerability. Fear of being vulnerable. If you feel like you need a virtual suit of armor to walk into a meeting because people are going to ask you questions and you need to deflect them, this is vulnerability. And what happens when you do this, you're not being authentic. And it actually comes through that you're not being authentic. And people start to mistrust you. They don't trust you. So you're building a culture of mistrust. So you slow decisions, you defer decisions, you stick to the same old stuff, stated procedures, no creativity. These are all things that leadership can fix. You need to do some training. You need to do some actual doing, experimenting. So, have you ever worked somewhere that undervalued leadership was trained? What happened? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to know what's going on. So, why now? I get asked this a lot. Why should I do this now? Why does it matter now? Why the best companies are doubling down on leadership training right now, because they understand that leadership is the only thing that scales faster than technology, because they understand that leadership is the only thing that scales faster than the policy changes that are going on. Let's compare this a little bit. The cost of leadership development versus losing a top performer, because we know that happens. Losing a top performer has a cost. It's usually around 200% of their salary, because it costs time and effort to get that new person into place. We have to go out and do interviews and look at resumes and interview them and pick one. And then they're not going to be as productive as your high performer for maybe 6 months, 9 months, a year. So all that builds up, right? So say a leader made 150K. That means you're spending 300K before you even start retraining their replacement. 300K, twice their salary. What does leadership development cost? Let's compare that. Well, often training programs are, I don't know, $1,500 per leader, especially if you're doing it inside and developing and paying your L&D. But even going outside for a course, maybe like $3,000. A leadership retreat, In fact, I'm running one in April if you're interested, and the cost is $5K. And that's an average cost for a leadership retreat. Um, and we'll talk about why these things. Executive coaching. Executive coaching, I'm a coach, can cost a leader 10 to 20K for, I don't know, a 6-month, 9-month program versus 300K. 20K versus 300K. 20, 20, 300, 20, 300, much less. It's a fraction of what you lose of what you pay when leaders leave or teams underperform. So let's talk about this a little bit. What are 3 ways that companies are investing, right? Um, if companies are investing now, what are 3 different ways to do it? We talked about training programs. In my mind, training programs are great, especially for scaling up some leadership skills. A training class usually does some very specific things within that class, right? So if that's a match, that really works to move up that leadership skills. However, the problem is this. It only works if you do them and you try them out and it gets reinforced. The problem is often, way too often, we may do a class online, or we may actually go out and do a course in person, and we come home with that fancy new binder, and it's really cool, and we have notes in it, and we kind of journaled in it, and great things thinking about it. But soon as it gets back to the office, right on top of the shelf, starting to gather dust. And the problem with that is that studies have shown, many of them, over and over again, show that unless we start using those things we learned in that class immediately, you're going to lose about 70%, 80% of what you were taught in 7 days. In 7 days. So you need to put these things into action. This is why executive coaching is such a great tool. It's the fastest way to make leadership changes. It's targeted, it's fast, and it is personalized. What has to happen now? What are the problems? Let's fix this now. We'll come back to what happens in executive coaching in a little bit. But the third one is leadership retreats. This is a breakthrough strategy type of deal. We bring leaders together, they help each other, they grow each other, they leave with clarity and real plans to move forward and actions. And often that's followed up with some coaching to actually make those things happen. So, which of these leadership investments do you think would be the biggest impact for you? Put them in the chat. Let's talk, or DM me. So, if we don't do this, we talked about the real costs here. We talked about why this leadership costs so much money. Bad leadership is the most expensive problem you don't even realize you're paying for. Turnover and retention costs. Losing a top performer costs up to 200% of their salary. Think about that before skipping a leadership program. Decision-making bottlenecks, which we talked about. Weak leadership equals slow decisions equal missed opportunities equals lost revenue. Lack of team engagement and productivities. Studies show disengaged teams cost companies $450, $550 billion a year. This leadership development fixes this. $450, $550 billion a year. We can fix this. Have you ever left a job because of bad leadership? No shame. Drop it in the comments and we'll talk about that. Now, some people have asked me the types of things that we talk about in leadership, I mean in coaching programs, right? So let's look at it this way. Emerging leaders. What do we talk about in coaching programs? Emerging leaders. At this stage, they're realizing that leadership is more than just getting work done. They're learning to transition from an individual contributor to a leader. They're learning that they need to build trust and credibility to be able to handle tough conversations. They need to manage time effectively. And this is something we talk about in so many discussions in so many different ways. So they're not just drowning in tasks. I hear often managers telling me, oh, I can't give this to my team because they're so busy, so I do it myself. They're not delegating well. They're not prioritizing well. This is a big problem, time management. Understanding their leadership style, their brand, and they're understanding that executive presence is something that matters, and we have to understand that. Mid-level leaders, directors, senior managers, they're now starting to understand their value. And they're starting to move from managing individual contributors to managing managers. But they're still refining their brand, making the shift from doer to visionary or strategist, right? And their focus is on leading through others. It's not just managing tasks anymore. How do I lead through leaders? Gaining executive buy-in, influencing upward is a big part of executive presence, right? We need to influence up, down, and across. How do we make that happen? Learning to prioritize high-value work over busy work. The time management thing is coming back in. You get conflicting priorities, different things coming in. How do you prioritize them and get things done? And refining their leadership brand from execution focus to a little bit more of a big picture thinker. And this is what happens with directors. Top level leaders, C-suite, VPs, presidents, when I coach them at high levels, we're talking about leadership, about vision, about influence, about long-term impact. The biggest challenges are here is mastering executive presence at a point where we can lead in the boardroom and beyond. We are also talking about strategic decision-making and risk management. Everybody's crystal ball that we're looking in and trying to figure out what's going on and what we should do, right? It's foggy, it's cracked. We kind of have to look around all of this to make decisions. But we have to manage the risk because we don't know what's going to happen. So decision making and managing risk is a big part of top level leaders that we coach. Sustaining and expanding their leadership brand to stay relevant, impactful, and build that up. Now, still time management, high value time allocation. What do they truly need to focus on that moves the needle, and what do they need to give to their leadership staff? So leadership is an evolution. It's never ending. It's never stopping. Every level, leadership requires adapting, refining, stepping into bigger challenges. So, where are you in this journey? What's the biggest leadership challenge you are working on right now? Let's talk about it. Communication, decision making style, shape how you are perceived and how your career is impacted in growth. So, we are pretty much on time for today. The best leaders are not waiting for things to settle. The best leaders are not waiting for things to settle. They're preparing now. What is one leadership skill you know you want to level up this year? Let's drop it in the comments or DM me and let's talk about that. In the meantime, it was great talking to you. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, DM me. I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, I'll see you in my next streams. You have a great day and see you next week.